Hey, Cory from Aquarium Co-op here. Today I want to talk about kind of my favorite fish. Now, I've done a lot of top 10, top 5 videos over the course of my career, but they've always been centered around something, for your 10 gallon, your 5 gallon, my 5 favorite libraries, whatever it is. And today, I gave myself a task to kind of slim down the fish room and focus what I really was enjoying. And by doing that, I found a lot of the fish that I consider to be must experience in my career. So, I've been keeping fish for almost 20 years now, and 15 of it in a very professional manner, managing over hundreds of tanks, right? So I've experienced a lot of fish. And when I looked at my fish room right now, which is at 36 aquariums, and I wanted to slim it down to like 10. I want to get more manageable. I want to focus on more things a little more intently and get back to basics, if you will. And so I dwindled down. I was like, well, of what I'm keeping, what can I not live without? And that's that list today. And so I thought I'd go over that with you guys. And, a lot of you might shake your head and go, yeah, I got those. I like those. A lot of you are going to disagree. I couldn't live without this. And by all means, there's lots of fish that are super cool. I've kept tons of them in my career. And some are like pipefish, for instance, breeding them and playing with them, super fun. Don't want to take care of them long term, a lot of work. I can appreciate stingrays, not my thing, right? Arowanas, kind of not my thing. But these are the fish that over the years I can kind of get anything I want, are the ones that I still choose to keep and will keep because I think they have distinct characteristics and are fun. And so I'm going to get into each one of those kind of a little bit more. So the first one I want to talk about is Shunan Goldfish. Might be kind of a throw you for a loop thing because I don't keep a whole lot of them, although they've always kind of been in the wings in the fish room. You see them, they're eating duckweed, they're cleaning up, I'm putting them in my ponds, I'm using them. And specifically, it's the single-tailed goldfish, comets, and shubunkins. Shubunkins kind of have the more color. They're very hardy. They don't have to be heated. They'll eat anything. They will eat that duckweed. They'll help clean up. They're actually, in my opinion, very clean fish in that they will eat their own poop. They'll eat other people's poop, like big puffers, that kind of stuff. In general, you can put them into a tank and they will gobble it up and turn it into stuff that your filters can collect and you can extract out of that aquarium. Now, lots of fish police exist around goldfish and stuff, but in my experience, the fish, gets roughly 8 inches, 10 inches maybe. You can get some monsters growing if you're really trying, but just in normal aquaria, and when I say normal aquarium, I'm talking a 55 gallon or a 75 gallon maybe, and they're relatively easy to take care of. Yeah, they can get some illnesses every once in a while, but so can all fish, but you can use salt to treat most of it. That's really nice. They're really hardy to a lot of medications. And so if you create an aquarium that is mostly hardy plants like Bulbitis, Anubias, Java ferns, and these shubunkins and comets, and you don't overstock, you can have a really nice, fun aquarium that will last a long time. They tend to live a very long time, partially because they're in cooler waters so that they have a slower metabolism. And you'll really identify them as like, these are my wet pets. They get names, right? And so one of my aquariums, I'm actually, at the current moment, thinking of turning my 800-gallon aquarium into shubunkins, which I've done fancy goldfish in the past, and I love fancy goldfish, but they're not problematic free. They're bred certain ways to get cool looks, but that comes with complications. And when you try to mix some of those, they don't always mix right. And so single-tailed goldfish have been a staple for me. I bred them, I enjoy them. And so, they tolerate a wide variety of parameters and pH, anywhere from about 6.8 to 8.5, like a lot. All types of hardness. Temperatures, they can handle a pretty wide range. They prefer to be a little bit cooler, but they'll go into the 80s during the summer if you have to in your house. And so just in general, they're very adaptive, and that's what makes them so nice to own. Is things get busy, they're still just kind of thriving. Yeah, you got to change water, but you got to change water with all fish, right? I don't find them that you have to do extra water changes. Now, if you put a fish that's going to get 10 inches or something in too small of a tank, that's a problem. But as I said before, 55 gallon, 75 gallon, and up, obviously. You can always find ponds for them, or at least I can. Lots of neighbors and stuff like that. And as far as stocking goes, I prefer to have like 3 of them in a 75 or 55. You know, you can go 4 or 5, you know, if you're going to step them up as they get bigger. And a preference for me is I typically buy 6, 7, or 8 of them, start growing them, and then I choose one sex to keep, either males or females, because I just like a very docile aquarium, and the breeding of fish can kind of get out of control when it comes to those goldfish. So, you know, if you've got a bunch of girls and 1 boy, that's probably fine, but if you have a bunch of boys and 1 girl, real rough on the girl. So if I buy extras and I kind of sort through them, they're fairly easy to sex. The males get all the tubercles on their gill plates and everything. It kind of looks like they have ick on their face. That's how you'll know you have males. Plus, it'll be real obvious when they start chasing the females and trying to breed with them. And but when you can get to that calm, hey, I got 3 of these things in this 75-gallon tank. I'm really enjoying this. Not overstocked until the upper end. Like, oh, I've had them for 10 years. They're getting pretty big. Maybe then you upgrade again. But talking big, long timelines, I find it to be very, very enjoyable. Next up for me, it is Variatus Platies, or just platies in general. Very simple fish. They come in a bunch of colors. They're crossbred with swordtails and things to get swordtails those colors. But I find, again, wide variety of color, wide variety of water parameters. They can live in much smaller aquariums. 20, 30, 40-gallon aquariums all do really well with them. They're live bears. They give birth to live fish. That's a very fun experience for you and your family, or just me in general. I love it. Right now, that's one of the things I have the most in my fish room is I got blue ones, I've got orange ones, I've got yellow ones, I've got orange and yellow ones, I have long fins, I have normal fins, I have little fireball platies, which are a dwarf version. I love them, right? And they eat a little bit of algae, which is kind of cool. They'll pick at a little bit of stuff. They're not too picky of eaters. They replicate any pH kind of 7 to 8.5. Water parameters anywhere from 72 degrees to 85 degrees, you know, in that hot summertime area. They don't live as long, you know, only probably 2 to 3 years, especially if you keep them hot or not as long, keep them cooler, they'll live a little longer. I find they stand out really well versus live plants. So you can have a full-on planet tank and have these big, well, not big, but these beautiful standout solid color fish or multicolor fish. You know, I would put more females than males. In a perfect world, you kind of buy them in trios, 1 boy for every 2 girls. And I usually try to get at least 6 fish. And I populate an aquarium, and I just let them breed, and I enjoy them. And they can cohabitate with lots of other stuff, so you don't have to worry about that. And they're not as ornery as like a swordtail. Swordtails are kind of jerks a little bit. Most platies, not so much. They're real laid back. And if you go with the Variatus Platies, they can actually go much cooler. In my testing, at least the version I had, I could get them down to about 58 degrees outside. Under that, they started kind of having some illnesses and stuff, but I think over time you can get them even cooler. And so the normal standard platy, tropical water fish, Variatus Platies can go subtropical, and just really enjoyable, robust, hardy, great fish for beginners, great fish for almost anybody, honestly. The big key is they want hard water, so have nutrients in the water, have a pH above 7, feed them and clean them like every fish, and usually have a colony thriving and just having some fun. You probably give some back to the fish store at some point and just enjoy them. Next up for me, puffers. I think they deserve a spot in almost everyone's fish room. Not necessarily a giant Maboo puffer like I've had. Maybe something like Pea Puffers. They're just a different enough fish. They're enjoyable. They got crazy good vision, so they see outside the tank and they can greet you, and it's kind of like having a puppy. And so I really enjoy that. And not all puffers are my jam. Some are very aggressive, and I don't like that in aquariums myself. I watch aquariums be peaceful and just watch them interact with the little world I've built them underwater. And so Pea Puffers do a great job of that. And like all fish, kind of having more females than males is usually a good thing. You can look at the spots on their belly and some other stuff. Usually not when you're buying them. You got to kind of grow them out. So maybe you buy 6 of them. You can keep them all the way down, and this will be, internet's on fire with this one. But, I've seen lots of families be very successful with 1 Pea Puffer and a 5-gallon. That being said, it depends on water changes. It depends on, are you enriching it? Are you playing with it? Are you giving it different foods? Are you doing all these things? And in general, I go, well, like 3 and a 10-gallon, or, maybe up to 6 and a 20-gallon with the right ratios of male and female leads to a pretty active tank, pretty fun, pretty easy to feed, pretty easy to take care of keep clean, keep healthy, all of those things. They don't do well on average with other fish. They can sometimes. We've had some at the store that live with shrimp, which they normally wouldn't, or snails. In general, they're kind of little murder death machines, but you can get groups of them that are very laid back and will cohabitate with other fish. But I wouldn't go into that thinking, oh, mine will be that way. Think of it more like, hey, I have a cat that happens to love birds. Normally, the cat is a predator to the birds. Pufferfish are normally the predators to the shrimp and the snails and some of the other little small fish. So, nice planted tank, lots of stuff to explore. I find to be important. Keep them, maybe move decorations around, find new ways to feed them, make them hunt for the food, use a little bit of live foods from time to time. Stuff that can enrich their lives goes a long way, and I think it makes it more fun for your household as well. And right now, I am actually pufferless after losing all of my large puffers over the last year, basically. The one at the store and then the one in my personal 800-gallon aquarium. And I'm sure at some point I will introduce puffers back into my life because they have that component that other fish just don't. They're different, and I find that enjoyable. So that's where it hits my list of like, if I'm slimming down to the bare minimum, I think I got to keep some puffers still. Even if they're just pea puffers, little helicopters in the water. They swim differently, they act differently, and it's just a good time. Next up on the list, I'm going to put clown loaches. Clown loaches have been in and out of favor in my fish room for the last 20 years. And when they're in, they're the coolest thing I have in my aquariums. And when they're out, I've just gotten bored, but I always come back to them in a year or two because I'm going, I miss all their clown-like antics. Now, the bummer about clown loaches is they can get sick really easy when they're young. They can, in power outages and other stuff, really not do well. They like to be warm. They like to have clean water. They like things stable. Anytime you deviate from that, they go downhill. And they're sensitive to medications. Not that the medications recommended won't work. It's just in general, when you start using any medications or they get sick, they are harder to get healthy and thriving again versus other types of fish. Not that the medications necessarily get them or anything. It's just in general, once they get sick, it's really hard to get them thriving again without some casualties. Doable, but sad every time because they live a very long time and you've been growing them a long time. And so what I like to do with these guys, I buy a big group, and a big group is to me 6, 12, 20, 30, as many as you can afford to get your hands on. I'm growing them out in a 230-gallon aquarium. Eventually they get this big, but that's 10 years down the road. In 5 years, they're like this big, and you've got time on your hands, but you still got to be diligent about good quality foods, good quality water changes, cleaning filters, providing shelter. When they're young, they're very skittish, and even though we're buying them at maybe 3 inches, that's still very young in a clown loach. That might only be 8 months old. And so they need to be eating several times a day not to get too skinny and basically lose weight. So that gets a lot of people, throws them for a loop. Anything smaller than about 3 inches, you got to be feeding them like 4 or 5 times a day. You just wouldn't know it. They're very cheap, but they're hard to keep alive. And then after that, they kind of become just this routine fish of like, hey, you feed them and they're a great thing to enjoy. You can get them to cohabitate with plants. They love to poke holes in them and just play with them. They play rough, basically. And they do funny clown loach antic things. They lay on their side, pretending to be dead. They will cram 30 of them into a piece of pipe because it's funny and hilarious, and that's what they do. I've seen them pick up one specific rock in the aquarium and run to the other side of the aquarium, and they steal it from each other, and it's like a dog with a ball. And it's always the same rock. It's not just a rock. It's that same rock. Somehow they all know that's the rock we want. We want to chase that. We want to pass it around. And so when you get behaviors like that, that's different than most fish, right? That's pack mentality. That's, playing fetch and that kind of stuff. And it's a spot to unload all your snails because they love to eat anything in a shell. And so they also look great, and they get big, and they live a long time. Those are all qualities I enjoy, and they don't really fight each other too much. They can. They got a little spike underneath their eye. It looks like a cat's claw when they're fighting or trying to establish dominance. And they can poke you pretty good if you're handling them with your hand, which I don't recommend. And they get stuck in nets, which that's a problem too. But anywhere from like a 6.8 pH all the way up to African cichlid type water, where it's 8 or above, they can handle lots of hardness or not too much hardness. They can go with lots of tannins in the water or none. They just like lots of meat in their diet. And so what I love about clown loaches is you see them and they can be mixed with almost anything. They can be mixed with tetras, they can be mixed with African cichlids, they can be mixed with big arowanas, assuming they're already big, obviously, and they're not just swallow size. But they're very adaptable, and I love to see them in a big group. Once they kind of get to like that 5-inch size, they move around as a pack of dogs, and they're having a lot of fun. But at the 3-inch size, they're just all skittish. You look at them, they run, right? And so that's the phase I'm in again, growing another group. And usually for me, what happens is a big reset happens. Power was out for 7 days. I lost like 4 of them. I'm bummed out, 4 out of 30 of them or something. And then there's this new rare fish I want to try. So, okay, I'm going to sell out the clown loach because they have value. A lot of people love clown loaches. And then I do the other fish. And then a year later, I'm going, why'd I get rid of those? I love those things. I need to get clown loaches back again. And so I've got them in my fish room right now. Again, I've done that like 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years, basically, is I've got that cycle. I keep them for 3 or 4 years, get rid of them for a year, then they got to come back. So highly recommended. They do better in warmer temperatures, in my opinion. If you can keep them at 85, they tend to get less sick. That being said, you need lots of air stones and stuff, and not a lot of other fish like that. So then maybe make the compromise. I'm keeping them at 80. Yeah, they still do pretty good too. But they can they get sick a little easier. And I've kept plenty of them at 80. So it's not like, I wouldn't do that. You can even keep them down at 76 or so and they'll do well. But as you get colder, I feel like they get more and more susceptible. Like, they got sick again this year. Where if you keep them at 85, you're like, yeah, it's been like 3 or 4 years. Haven't had any illness, no spot, no skinny disease, none of this. Just been doing really well. And so that's where I like to keep them. And you think logically, keep them with discus. That'd be great. Some people do it. I find that the clown loaches will dominate the food and the discus don't get enough to eat. And so they're suffering for it. So even though they love the same temperatures, I'm not sure it's a good pairing. And so, research the heck out of clown loaches. There's plenty for you to research and see, even on my channel, on other channels, and blog articles and stuff. And really, decide that you love them and then go, oof, they're expensive, kind of. That's a $10+ fish easy, and they want big groups, and I need a big tank. And but you can do, I would say the smallest tanks I think clown loaches should really go in is like 55 gallons. You can keep them for quite a number of years, maybe 7, 8, 9 years in 55 gallons. And after that, maybe you rehome them. You bring them back to a pet store. They give you some more small ones. You sell them off. You trade them. Whatever you're going to do. Or maybe after 10 years, you get a bigger tank because you've fallen in love with them. Whatever it's going to be. But I would make sure that you have plans for power outages and stuff because it's a real bummer. Year 5 to go, we were out of power 4 days. I lost all my clown loaches. Try to get a generator, have the heaters ready, have blankets to cover it, all that stuff. Battery-powered air pump, stuff like we sell. All that stuff to really help keep them getting through that. So that's what I would focus on there because they're a great animal long term. Next up, I'm going to talk about guppies. I'm kind of the guppy guy. I've kept tons of guppies, and I don't see myself keeping aquariums without some guppies. They're very easy to reproduce. You can get them in any color, any pattern, basically. They're fairly cheap, and they do well with live plants. They'll eat almost anything. They're not too fussy with water or temperature. Mostly it's keep them above 7. Keep some hardness in there, some minerals, and they will do well. I could dwell on about guppies, but I think everybody kind of knows what a guppy is. Buying yourself some nice higher end strains sometimes makes it a little more magical for you. But in general, small fish, as small as 10 gallons, I would say. You can do even smaller, but I enjoy them in 10 gallons or more. Planted tank, great for an office tank, a bedroom, nightlight type of scenario, a nursery, in the kitchen, almost anywhere. You can put just a tank of guppies and it will be enjoyable. So I really enjoy that, and I plan to have them in my fish room going forward, and I always will. I think it's a fish that there's always enough variation that you're always like, ooh, I hadn't seen that. That's pretty neat. I need that. So definitely don't sleep on guppies. It's easy to be like, everybody guppy, newbie fish, all that, but stuff becomes popular because it's very cool. And I would recommend, if you haven't kept guppies and bred them and enjoyed them as a colony fish, then I would give that a try. Last up, kind of, number 6, I guess this is on the list. I would say shrimp and snails. Basically cherry shrimps and any other color variety. And then snails, whether it's just a pond snail, a high-end snail, a trapdoor snail, just the invertebrates. I find them to be a healthy, I kept them just as shrimp tanks, just as snail tanks. They're very low maintenance. They don't have to be heated. They can be in that 5-gallon on your desk at work or wherever. And I find myself kind of drifting off going, what are you doing, little buddy? And that is the magic of it. It's not, there's not a lot going on, as in like, oh God, they're all over the place. It's just, oh, that's interesting. Very calming. You can do work and think about it. Just, oh yeah, you're just eating your food. Nice. Okay. And that's the magic of them. And you can get them in colors. They can make more. All of that. You can sell them off. You can trade them. Just a basic cherry shrimp, that really good looking color. Green plants. It looks really nice. They help clean your aquarium. They make more. They're enjoyable. They can be a great food source if you have other big fish. And same with snails. Snails, shrimp and snails, they can be feeding some other fish like clown loach and that kind of stuff. And then also they're just enjoyable. So a lot of my fish recommendations, they all kind of can go together. Like maybe I'm keeping snails and Variatus Platies. Maybe I'm keeping shrimp and Guppies. Maybe I'm got too many snails and I'm feeding the clown loaches, right? All of those things make sense to go together for the most part. Shubunkin's kind of a different thing. You don't want them to choke on a snail or something like that. But, these are fish that I feel like will continue to stay in my fish room after what I've tried all the things. And that's not to say that these are the only good fish. There are so many good fish, right? And there's still more I'm going to try because I haven't kept them all. But I know that like maybe this is 6 out of 10 aquariums I'm going to keep, and 4 will be rotating of let me find what's number 7 on that list, right? And there's stuff that I think people should experience, like maybe breeding Crebensis or convicts some point in their life. You got to try discus. You got to try some of these quintessential fish. But when it comes down to what am I, when you go to a mechanic or a wood shop person or some other specialty and they got all these tools, they got all this stuff. And you go, yeah, but what do you use most? What do you like the most? And they go, oh, these 2 or 3 things. That's what I'm trying to impart on you here is, after all this, what are your go-tos? These are my go-tos. And so I feel like the go-to list from someone who's done something for a long time is a great place to start when you're getting in. And even if you've been in a long time and, it's 2 mechanics talking, you're like, oh, you don't use an X2973? No, I don't. You love it? I can't get through the day without it. Instantly, you're going, I got to get me an X2973. That seems, now I understand why. And so maybe some on this list has done that for you. Like, you know what? I do have to try that out. So good luck. Enjoy. And that's really what it's all about. Enjoy nature daily. Enjoy your fish every day. Take care of them. Enjoy them. We'll see you next time.